Task Analysis and Chaining Training by Heather Allen, Melissa Magbu, Tyler Morelli, Danny Robeson, and Diana Simpson. To ensure that the acquisition of necessary knowledge and skills are taking place at Great Opportunities Career Services and Day Program, task analysis, including forward, backward chaining, and total task presentation, will be utilized in the teaching of new skills. This training covers task analysis as well as forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task presentation, implementation, modeling the strategy, methods, materials, use of strategy to address identified needs, overview of clinic-wide implementation, and final tips.
Task analysis is an evidence-based procedure grounded in applied behavior analysis that's used to break down a specific skill into its small, teachable steps. Task analysis identifies the small steps that make up the behavioral chain of sequential responses of any complex skill. Examples of skills that consist of behaviorally chained steps include tying shoes, making a sandwich, and washing a load of clothes. Chaining is the term for the instructional strategy used to prompt and reinforce each of the steps identified through the task analysis of a specific skill. There are three variations of chaining: forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task presentation.
Forward chaining versus backward chaining. Forward chaining begins with the first element in the chain and progresses to the last element. Trainer would start with teaching the first step of the task. Once the first step can be performed to satisfaction, trainer then teaches the first and second step together. Steps of the task are not taught separately. They are taught together in a chain. This continues until all steps have been taught from beginning to end. Backward chaining begins with the last element in the chain and then proceeds to the first element. Trainer would complete all steps except the last. Learner is prompted to complete the last task. Once independence is shown in completion of last step, trainer then completes all steps except last two. Learner is completing last two until completed in independence. This continues through the chain until all steps have been taught in reverse order.
Total task presentation. Total task presentation is a form of forward chaining. All steps are taught each time until the entire skill is mastered. Follow the steps outlined below. Use a prompting procedure and visual supports or video modeling to assist the learner in performing each step of the task analysis. Reinforce the learner for completing each step. Be sure to save the most effective reinforcer for the final step when the entire skill or behavior has been performed. Fade reinforcers as quickly as possible.
Implementation of staff training. The skills you learn in this task analysis and chaining training will be utilized throughout the agency. During this training, we will be practicing new skills. Staff members are encouraged to use these skills with their clients. Ultimately, it will fall to the direct support staff to ensure that all task analysis and chaining techniques are implemented correctly. When questions arise, staff members are encouraged to seek out their immediate supervisor. Retraining can be provided as necessary.
Implementation of new skills. Step 1. Identify the prerequisite skills of the client. If the learner does not have the prerequisite skills, these skills will either need to be incorporated into the steps of the task analysis or taught before proceeding with the task analysis itself. Step 2. Break the skill into steps. Break down a target skill into smaller steps by watching someone competent in completing the target skill, complete the task, and write down each step. See Appendix A for an example of a completed task analysis. Step 3. Confirm that the skill is completely analyzed. Check the accuracy of the steps by performing the target skill again and following each of the steps, making sure each step is a discrete behavior and that the steps are manageable for the learner. Step 4. Determine the chaining strategy for how the skill will be taught. See Appendix B for chaining strategies. Step 5. Select the evidence-based methods for teaching the steps of the skill. For example, prompting and reinforcement. Step 6. Develop the materials. For example, pictures, text, video, etc., to be used to present the steps of the task analysis. Step 7. Collect baseline data. Step 8. Implement the intervention by following the unique steps for the selected chaining strategy. Step 9. Collect data on target skills. Be sure to include the level of support needed for each of the steps identified for the task analysis. Step 10. Monitor progress and determine the next steps based on analysis of the data.
Now that you've learned how to write a task analysis, let's write one together. Take about 5 seconds and think of all the steps that go into washing your hands. Now let's go over them. Did you get the same 7 steps? Turn on warm water, get hands wet, pump soap into hands, rub hands together for 30 seconds, rinse off soap and water, turn off water, and dry hands with towel. It's okay if you got more steps than that. The good thing about a task analysis is that you can always break steps down further depending on the ability levels, or you can leave it more general. Now that we have a task analysis that we've written together on hand washing, let's go over the ways we can teach using this task analysis. First, we could use forward chaining. Forward chaining, we would start with teaching the individual how to turn on the water, which is step 1. We continue with the next step after the previous steps have been mastered. So we'd start with teaching the individual how to turn on the warm water, and then we would complete the rest of the steps for the individual. Once turning on the water has been mastered, we would allow the individual to turn on the water independently, and using guided prompts, teach them how to get their hands wet and so on. Our next strategy would be backwards chaining, which we would complete all the steps 1 through 6, for the individual, and we would teach them how to dry their hands first. Once drying hands have been mastered, teach turning off the water and having the individual complete drying hands independently. And we would work backwards from step 7 through step 1 until all 7 steps have been mastered. Our third strategy would be total task chaining, in which each skill in the hand washing process will be taught from start to end, similar to forward chaining. However, each skill in a task will be taught every teaching session versus focusing on only one skill at a time. So each time this person comes to the sink, they will practice each step 1 through 7 in order. In total task chaining, some steps might be mastered out of order as compared to forward and backwards chaining, which are usually mastered in order taught. The materials needed to teach a task analysis will vary greatly depending on the skill being taught. For our example of hand washing, we would need a sink with running water, a bottle of soap, and a paper towel or a cloth towel. It is important to consider the materials you'll need while writing the steps for the chosen task. It's also important to make sure that you have all materials needed to teach the task each time it is being taught. It is also important to keep data while teaching a skill with a task analysis. Data sheets will be necessary to keep track of mastered skills and to determine if changes need to be made to programming based on rate of skill acquisition. On the next slide, we will look at a sample data sheet for teaching a task analysis. On this sample data sheet, you'll see there is a place for the student name, the skill being taught, the criteria for mastering each step, instructions, a key for the prompts that are used, and a place to put down which type of chaining procedure you'll be using. Under Student's Will column, you would write down the steps of the task analysis, and on the right, you would put in the date of the skill being taught, and circle which type of prompt was needed. If your criteria was 5 consecutive days independently, you could circle independent 5 days in a row, and then you can mark that skill mastered and move on to the next skill being taught.
Task analysis. I need a therapist to volunteer. Is everyone ready? 1. Pick up the coat by the collar. The inside of the coat should be facing you. 2. Place your right arm in the right sleeve hole. 3. Move your arm through until you can see your hand at the other end. 4. Now reach behind with your left hand. 5. Locate the left sleeve hole. 6. Put your arm in the left sleeve hole. 7. Move your arm through until you see your hand at the other end. 8. Adjust the coat so it is ready to zip. Great job!
Okay, let's practice the task analysis. Your task challenge. Each group will be given one of the following numbers. Complete the tasks in the correct order. You will be creating a skit as therapist and client. Number 1, tasks include eating with a fork, defining the target behavior, break behavior into steps, teach behavior through 4-0 chain. Number 2 includes brushing teeth, defining the target behavior, breaking behavior into steps, and teaching behavior through backward chaining. Number 3 includes compliance, sitting, defining the target behavior, breaking behavior into steps, and teaching behavior through total task chaining.
Task analysis addresses identified needs. Task analysis and its chaining strategies are an effective way to teach a variety of adaptive life skills as they provide instructors with a sequential approach and measurable goals. Task analysis serves as a diagnostic function by focusing on a learner's specific functioning level of targeted skills. Task analysis allows learners to move at their individual pace towards the highest level of independence that he or she is able to achieve.
Overview of clinic-wide implementation. 1. All staff members will receive initial training on task analysis and chaining techniques. 2. Direct support staff members will practice their newly learned skills. Results will be reviewed by supervisors and behavior analysts. 3. Direct support staff will be responsible for implementing the task analysis and chaining techniques with their clients. 4. Staff members will seek out help from supervisors or behavior when questions arise. 5. Supervisors and behavior analysts will retrain staff members as necessary.
Final tips. Determine if the client has the prerequisite skills for the target skill. Complete the task yourself or watch someone competent complete the task to identify the smaller steps of the target skill. Select additional evidence-based practices that can be used to teach the client the individual steps of the target skill. Consider the strengths and needs of the client to determine how the steps of the task analysis should be presented. If the client is not showing progress, the following questions should be considered. Is the target skill well defined? Does the client have the prerequisite skills needed to learn the skill? Was the task completely analyzed? Was an appropriate chaining strategy selected to teach the individual steps of the task analysis? Was the chaining strategy used with fidelity?